Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin.
Rose Calloway stared at the spreadsheets on her computer screen, the numbers aligning perfectly like obedient soldiers. Unlike family, numbers never lied. Numbers never played favorites. Her office, a testament to her success, sat 30 floors above Austin's bustling streets. Glass walls framed a view most would kill for, but Rose barely noticed it anymore. Success had become her oxygen, necessary, but unremarkable. Her assistant knocked on the doorframe. "Ms. Calloway, your 3 o'clock is cancelled." "Thank you, Alex." Rose didn't look up. "And this came for you." Alex placed a cream-colored envelope on her desk. Rose recognized the monogrammed C immediately. Her stomach tightened. The Calloway family crest, a reminder of bonds she couldn't fully sever. After Alex left, Rose picked up the envelope with her manicured fingers, turning it over as if it might explode. Inside was an invitation to dinner at her parents' mansion, a family gathering. Rose grimaced, memories flooded back. Her 12th birthday, she'd asked for art supplies. Her parents gave her a piggy bank instead. "Start saving for college," her father had said with a condescending smile. 2 weeks later, Tiffany turned 8 and received a custom-made dollhouse that cost more than Rose's entire school wardrobe. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Don't forget dinner tonight. Important family matters to discuss." Rose set her phone down without replying. She knew what important family matters meant. It meant they wanted something. It always did. At32, Rose had built her financial consulting firm from scratch. When she'd approached her father for a small loan to start her business, he'd laughed. "Get a real job first," he'd said. Rose remembered how Tiffany sat beside him, scrolling through her phone, the diamond tennis bracelet their parents had given her for trying her best in community college glinting in the light. Now Rose managed millions for elite clients who respected her sharp mind and ruthless efficiency. She'd climbed every step alone, fueled by the determination to never need her family for anything. She closed the spreadsheet and opened her calendar. Maybe she should go to dinner. Maybe it was time to make it perfectly clear where they all stood. The Calloway mansion stood like a fortress in West Lake Hills, all limestone and arrogance. Rose parked her Mercedes next to her father's Bentley, noting how Tiffany's bright pink convertible took the prime spot nearest the door. Rose straightened her blazer and walked in without knocking. The house smelled of expensive perfume and roast beef. "Rose!" Her mother, Veronica, rushed over in a cloud of Chanel No. 5. She air-kissed both of Rose's cheeks, careful not to smudge her makeup. "We thought you might not come." "I said I would." Rose's voice was cool. "Well, you say a lot of things, sweetheart," Veronica said with a tight smile. "Come in, your father's mixing drinks." The living room was a showcase of designer furniture that no one actually used. Family photos adorned the walls, mostly of Tiffany. Rose noted a new portrait of her sister above the fireplace. In it, Tiffany posed with a champagne glass, her signature pout directed at the camera. Dwayne Calloway stood at the bar cart, ice clinking in crystal tumblers. "There she is," he announced. "The busy businesswoman graces us with her presence." Rose accepted the drink he handed her, but didn't take a sip. "Let's not pretend this is a social call. What do you want?" Dwayne's smile faltered. "Can't a father want to see his daughter?" "You usually don't." Veronica cut in, "Rose, please. Let's have a nice dinner first." The dining room table was set with the good china, another signal that they wanted something significant. Rose took her seat as the housekeeper served the first course. Halfway through the soup, Tiffany burst in, 20 minutes late. "Sorry, everyone. Traffic was insane." She wore a dress that probably cost more than what most people made in a month. Dwayne's face lit up. "There's my little princess." Rose watched as her father pulled out Tiffany's chair and kissed the top of her head. He'd never greeted Rose that way, not once in her 32 years. "Rose!" Tiffany acknowledged with a brief nod before turning to their mother. Mom, you will not believe who I ran into at Neiman's today. The dinner proceeded with Tiffany dominating the conversation. Her stories about Instagram partnerships and celebrity encounters met with enthusiastic responses from their parents. Rose ate silently, waiting for the real purpose of this gathering. Finally, as dessert was served, Dwayne cleared his throat. Rose, we wanted to talk to you about something important. Here it comes, Rose thought. Your sister has an amazing opportunity, he continued. Tell her, Tiff. Tiffany straightened in her seat, her eyes bright with excitement. I've been invited to co-host this incredible retreat in Bali. It's going to be packed with influencers, and the exposure would be massive for my brand. Rose raised an eyebrow. Congratulations. The thing is, Veronica chimed in, it's quite expensive. The accommodations, the flights, the wardrobe, and… Rose set down her fork. Dwayne leaned forward. And we thought, since you're doing so well with your business, you might want to help your sister out. Invest in her future. Rose stared at them. You want me to pay for Tiffany's vacation? It's not a vacation, Tiffany protested. It's a career opportunity. Being an influencer is not a career, Rose replied flatly. Rose! Veronica gasped. How much? Rose asked. Dwayne shifted uncomfortably. 20,000 should cover it. Rose laughed, the sound sharp and without humor. $20,000 for a trip to Bali. You make that in what, a day? Tiffany said, rolling her eyes. Rose set her napkin on the table and stood up. Let me get this straight. You didn't help me with college. You didn't help me start my business. You've never supported anything I've done. But now you expect me to hand over $20,000 so Tiffany can take selfies on a beach. Don't be dramatic, Dwayne said. Family helps family. Since when? Rose demanded. When have you ever helped me? We raised you, Veronica said, affronted. No, you raised Tiffany. I raised myself. Rose looked at each of them. I worked my ass off while you handed her everything. No, I won't pay. In fact, I'm done. No more loans, no more bailouts. From now on, you fend for yourselves. Tiffany's mouth fell open. You can't be serious. Dead serious. Dwayne stood up, his face reddening. Now, you listen here. No, you listen, Rose cut him off. I'm not your bank. I'm not your safety net. I'm not even your daughter, as far as I can tell. I'm just the one who made it despite you, not because of you. She grabbed her purse and walked out, ignoring their protests. As she slid behind the wheel of her car, a weight lifted from her shoulders. For the first time in years, she felt free. 3 weeks later, Rose received another invitation, this time to her cousin Michael's engagement party. She considered skipping it, but decided to go. The Callaways weren't her only family. She had relatives who'd always treated her fairly. The party was held at her Aunt Patricia's sprawling ranch house. Rose arrived wearing a simple black dress, a gift tucked under her arm for the happy couple. As soon as she walked through the door, she felt the shift in atmosphere. Conversations halted, heads turned, eyes darted away when she tried to make contact. Rose, her aunt greeted her with a stiff hug. Didn't think you'd make it. I wouldn't miss it, Rose replied, sensing something was wrong. Where's Michael? On the patio with your father. Rose made her way through the house, nodding at relatives who suddenly seemed fascinated with their drinks. When she stepped onto the patio, her father's voice rose above the murmur of conversation. And after everything we've done for her, Dwayne was saying to a small group gathered around him. Absolutely heartless. He spotted Rose, and his eyes narrowed. Well, speak of the devil. The group turned to stare at Rose. Michael, her cousin, gave her an apologetic look before slipping away. What's going on? Rose asked, though she already knew. Dwayne stepped forward. I was just telling everyone how you refused to help your own sister. How you've turned your back on this family. Heat crept up Rose's neck. That's not what happened. No. Dwayne's voice rose. Tiffany needed your help, and you laughed in her face. Is that the kind of person you are? Someone who forgets where she came from. Tiffany appeared beside their father, eyes red and puffy. I lost the opportunity, she whimpered. Because of you. Veronica joined them, placing a protective arm around Tiffany. After everything we've done for you, Rose. How could you be so cruel? Rose felt dizzy with rage. Every eye at the party was on her, judging her based on her parents' twisted version of events. Everything you've done for me, she repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. Name one thing. One single thing you ever did for me that you didn't do tenfold for her. Dwayne waved a dismissive hand. We put a roof over your head. The bare minimum, Rose countered, while you gave her everything she ever wanted. She's struggling, Veronica insisted. She needs support. And I didn't. Rose's voice cracked slightly. When I was working 3 jobs during college. When I was sleeping on a friend's couch because I couldn't afford rent. Where was your support then? Tiffany sniffled dramatically. It's not my fault you always had to do everything the hard way. Rose was about to unleash years of pent-up fury when a raspy voice cut through the tension. Oh, shut the hell up, Dwayne. The crowd parted as Grandma Eleanor hobbled forward, her walking cane tapping an angry rhythm on the stone patio. At 82, she was a force of nature 4 feet 11 inches of pure steel. Grandma, Dwayne started, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Eleanor's eyes flashed. I've watched you two spoil that one. She jabbed her cane toward Tiffany until she can't function in the real world. Meanwhile, Rose has been working herself to the bone since she was a teenager, and you've taken advantage of her success at every turn. Murmurs rippled through the gathered family members. That's not true, Veronica protested weakly. Isn't it? Eleanor challenged. Whose idea was it to ask Rose to invest in your failing business last year? Who called her when Tiffany needed bail money after that DUI? Who expects her to foot the bill every time you're in a pinch? Rose stared at her grandmother in shock. She'd never spoken up like this before. Eleanor turned to address the whole family. Let me tell you something about this girl. She pointed at Rose. She graduated top of her class while working nights. She built a company from nothing because no one would help her. And now that she's successful, you all want a piece. She focused back on Dwayne and Veronica. Your golden goose is gone, and you'll be begging soon enough. Mark my words. A stunned silence fell over the patio. Dwayne's face contorted with rage. But even he wouldn't dare challenge his mother in public. Rose felt a surge of vindication. Without another word, she turned and walked out of the party, head held high. This time, she knew there was no going back. Rose buried herself in work over the next few weeks, expanding her client list and finalizing a major deal with a tech startup that would net her firm millions. Success was her best revenge, but she soon discovered that her family had other plans. She first noticed it when a longtime client canceled their meeting without explanation. Then another pulled their account entirely. When the third one mentioned concerns about her business ethics, Rose knew something was happening. The answer came in the form of a text from her assistant. Have you seen Tiffany's Instagram? Rose rarely checked social media, but she pulled up her sister's profile now. What she saw made her blood run cold. Tiffany's latest post showed her sitting on the floor of what appeared to be an empty apartment, mascara running down her face. The caption read, "When your own sister makes millions but leaves her family homeless. Hashtag family betrayal, hashtag toxic sibling, hashtag the real story." The post had thousands of comments, many from mutual acquaintances expressing shock and offering support to Tiffany. Rose scrolled through more of Tiffany's recent content, an entire fabricated narrative of Rose cutting off her family out of greed, leaving them destitute while she lived in luxury. Her phone rang. It was Julian Vega, a high-profile investor she'd worked with in the past. "Rose!" His smooth voice filled her ear. "Interesting family drama you've got going on." "It's all lies," Rose said flatly. "I figured as much." Julian paused. "Your sister contacted me, by the way. Asked if I'd consider investing in her lifestyle brand. Said you refused to help because you're jealous of her potential." Rose gripped her phone tighter. And I told her I only work with serious business people." He chuckled. "But I thought you should know she's reaching out to everyone in your circle." After hanging up, Rose paced her office. The damage control would be significant. This wasn't just a family squabble anymore. This was an attack on her reputation, her livelihood. Her phone buzzed with a text from her cousin Michael. "Just saw Tiffany's posts. Are you okay?" Rose started to type a response when another message came through, this one from her mother. "Your father's business is struggling because of what you've done. I hope you're happy." Rose set her phone down and walked to the window. Austin sprawled below her, a city where she'd built her own empire from nothing. She wouldn't let them tear it down. She picked up her phone again and dialed her assistant. "Alex, I need you to pull some information for me. Everything you can find on Callaway Interior's finances for the past 5 years." The battle lines were drawn. If they wanted war, she'd give them word by the following week. Rose had a complete picture of her parents' financial situation, and it was worse than she'd imagined. Their interior design business, Callaway Interiors, had been losing money for years. They'd taken out multiple loans against their house. Credit card debt piled up to fund their lavish lifestyle and Tiffany's expensive whims. They'd stayed afloat by occasionally tapping Rose for investments that were never repaid. Without that safety net, they were sinking fast. Rose sat at her desk, reviewing the financial reports. Her parents had no idea she could access this information. But in the financial world, Rose had connections they couldn't begin to comprehend. A plan formed in her mind. Subtle, elegant, devastating. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she rarely used. "Julian," she said when he answered. "Remember that leverage buyout strategy we discussed for the Peterson account? I have something similar in mind, but more personal." 2 days later, Rose met Julian at an upscale bar downtown. Despite his reputation for ruthlessness in business, Julian was always impeccably polite in person, rising as she approached the table. "Rose," he greeted her with a brief handshake. "You've piqued my interest with your proposal." They ordered drinks, and Rose laid out her plan. Julian listened intently, occasionally making notes on his tablet. "So," he said when she finished, "you want me to buy your parents' debt and call it in immediately?" "All of it," Rose confirmed. "The business loans, the second mortgage, everything." Julian studied her face. "This will ruin them." "They're already ruined," Rose replied coolly. "They just don't know it yet." He nodded slowly. "And what's in it for me? This isn't exactly a profitable venture." Rose slid a folder across the table. "Inside is information on 3 investment opportunities my firm has vetted. Any one of them will yield returns that make this little favor worthwhile." Julian opened the folder, eyebrows rising as he scanned the contents. "These are exceptional prospects. I only deal in exceptional." He closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. "You understand what you're doing, right? This goes beyond a family squabble." Rose's expression didn't change. "They crossed that line, not me." Julian considered for a moment, then nodded. "I'll have my team start acquiring the debt tomorrow." He raised his glass. "To family." Rose clinked her glass against his. "To getting what you deserve." The call came sooner than Rose expected. 3 weeks after her meeting with Julian, her mother's name appeared on her phone screen. Rose let it ring 4 times before answering. "Hello, Mother." "Rose." Veronica's voice sounded strained. "We need to talk." "About what?" Rose kept her tone neutral. "About everything. This situation has gotten out of hand. Your father, and I think it's time to put this unpleasantness behind us." Rose almost laughed. Unpleasantness? Is that what you call what Tiffany's been doing? What you've been doing? We're family, Veronica insisted. Families fight, but then they make up. What do you want, Mother? A pause. Can you come over for dinner tonight? Just to talk. Rose recognized the desperation lurking beneath Veronica's forced pleasantness. Julian must have made his move. Fine, Rose agreed. 8 o'clock. Thank you, sweetheart. We'll see you then. Rose hung up and immediately called Julian. They've reached out, she told him. What exactly did you do? Julian's voice was smooth. My company purchased all outstanding loans connected to Callaway Interiors, as well as the second mortgage on their home. Yesterday, we sent formal notice that payment in full is due within 30 days. How much? Just north of $500,000. Rose smiled. Perfect. The Callaway mansion looked the same from the outside, but Rose sensed the panic within as soon as she entered. Gone was her mother's usual air of superiority, replaced by a nervous energy as she ushered Rose inside. Your father's in the study, Veronica said, her smile too bright. Tiffany's here too. How lovely, Rose replied dryly. Dwayne sat behind his desk, attempting to project his usual confidence, but failing. Tiffany slouched in an armchair, her face set in a sullen pout. Rose. Dwayne stood, forcing a smile. Thank you for coming. Rose remained standing, noting the subtle signs of distress in the room, a stack of papers hastily shoved into a drawer, the empty space where an expensive painting once hung. Let's skip the pleasantries, she said. What is this about? Veronica perched on the arm of Tiffany's chair. We want to clear the air. This rift between us, it's not good for anyone. Really? Rose raised an eyebrow. Because according to Tiffany's Instagram, I'm a heartless monster who abandoned her family. Tiffany had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I was upset. You were lying, Rose corrected. Dwayne cleared his throat. Look, mistakes were made on all sides. But right now, we need to come together as a family. Why now? Rose asked, though she knew the answer. Veronica and Dwayne exchanged glances. We've hit a rough patch, Dwayne admitted. The business isn't doing well, and we've had some unexpected financial obligations come up. What a shame, Rose said, her voice devoid of sympathy. The thing is, Veronica cut in, we need your help. Tiffany shifted in her seat, and Rose noticed a small movement, her hand sliding beneath a cushion. The glint of a phone camera lens caught the light. Oh, that was their game. Get her on video refusing to help them. Use it to further damage her reputation. Claim she left them with nothing. Rose smiled. How much do you need? Dwayne blinked, surprised by her directness. Well, with the business loans and the mortgage, about $500,000. I see. Rose took a seat and crossed her legs. And what happens if you don't get this money? We lose everything, Veronica said, her voice cracking. The house, the business. That does sound serious, Rose agreed. Tell me, have you spoken with the company that holds your debt? Vega Capital. The color drained from Dwayne's face. How did you know about that? Rose's smile widened. You owe Julian Vega $500,000. I'm the one who sent him. You'll lose everything. And I'm going to watch. Veronica gasped, a hand flying to her chest. What are you saying? I'm saying, Rose leaned forward, that I arranged for Julian to buy all your debt. And unlike me, he has no family ties to consider when he collects. Veronica swayed, then collapsed onto the sofa. Dwayne stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Tiffany leapt to her feet. You can't do this. This is our home. Watch me, Rose replied calmly. But why? Dwayne finally managed. We're your parents. Rose stood, smoothing her dress. You should have thought of that before you decided to destroy my reputation, my business, and my life. She looked at each of them in turn. You never treated me like family. Now you know what that feels like. She walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Tiffany, you can post this conversation if you want. I'm sure your followers would love to know the truth about who's been supporting whom all these years. Rose left, their protests fading behind her as she walked to her car. The weight of decades of resentment lifted from her shoulders with each step. For once, they were the ones left powerless, grasping at air. Rose watched her family's downfall from a distance, the way one might observe a controlled demolition with clinical interest and a touch of satisfaction. Within weeks, the for sale sign appeared in front of the Calloway mansion, marked with a glaring foreclosure banner across the top. Calloway Interiors closed its doors. A discreet bankruptcy notice filed with minimal media attention. Rose had made sure of that. No need for public humiliation. The private kind was far more potent. Tiffany's Instagram transformed almost overnight. Gone were the designer outfits and exotic vacation photos, replaced by vague motivational quotes and sponsored posts for dubious weight loss products. Her follower count dwindled as her content grew, increasingly desperate. Rose kept tabs on them through the family grapevine. Her cousin Michael reported that Dwayne and Veronica had moved into a small apartment on the east side of town, a far cry from their Westlake Hills estate. Tiffany had apparently couch-surfed with friends until wearing out her welcome point one Tuesday morning. Rose's assistant buzzed her intercom. "Ms. Calloway, your father is here to see you." Rose paused, surprised. "Send him in." Dwayne Calloway entered her office like a shadow of his former self. His designer suit hung loose on his frame, his hair unkempt. The arrogance that once radiated from him had been replaced by something Rose had never seen before: defeat. "Rose." He nodded awkwardly, remaining standing even when she gestured to a chair. "What can I do for you?" Rose asked, her voice neutral. Dwayne swallowed hard. "I've come to ask for your help." "My help," Rose repeated. "Yes." He clasped his hands to stop them from shaking. "Things are bad, Rose. Really bad. Your mother and we've lost everything." "I'm aware. We've been trying to find work, but at our age." He trailed off. "And with the economy the way it is," Rose watched him struggle, remembering all the times she'd stood before him, asking for help with college, with her business, with anything. How he'd dismissed her, told her to toughen up to find her own way. "What exactly are you asking for?" she pressed. "A loan," he said quickly, "just to get back on our feet. Or a job, anything at your company. I could consult, or—" "No." The single word hung between them. Dwayne blinked, as if unable to process her refusal. "But we're family," he said, echoing the words they'd used against her so many times. "Are we?" Rose leaned back in her chair. "You didn't seem to think so when you were spreading lies about me, when you were trying to sabotage my business, when you were teaching Tiffany that I owed her a lifestyle she didn't earn. That was different. We were angry. And now you're desperate." Rose stood up. "The answer is no, Dad. No money. No job. No help." Dwayne's expression hardened, a flicker of the old arrogance returning. "You'd leave your own parents with nothing? What kind of person does that make you?" "The kind you raised," Rose replied simply. "You taught me that family doesn't matter. That lesson cost you everything." His face flushed red. "You'll regret this. When you're older, when you need someone." "I've never needed anyone," Rose cut him off. "You made sure of that." She pressed the intercom. "Alex, please escort Mr. Calloway out." Dwayne left without another word, his shoulders slumped in final defeat. When the door closed behind him, Rose sat back down, waiting for guilt or remorse to surface. It never came. Instead, she felt only a quiet certainty that justice had finally been served. A week later, Rose received a handwritten note from her grandmother, Eleanor, inviting her to dinner. unlike the formal invitations from her parents. This one was warm, personal, a simple card with Eleanor's shaky handwriting asking Rose to come for a real family meal. Eleanor lived in a modest ranch house on the outskirts of the city. Surrounded by pecan trees and rose bushes, she tended herself. As Rose pulled into the gravel driveway, a sense of peace washed over her. This place had always been a sanctuary. "There's my girl!" Eleanor called from the porch, waving her cane in greeting. Rose embraced her grandmother, inhaling the familiar scent of talcum powder and homemade bread. "It's good to see you, Grandma." Inside, the house was exactly as Rose remembered from childhood visits, comfortable furniture worn soft with use, photos of family arranged on walls and shelves, an ever-present aroma of something delicious cooking. "I'm making your favorite," Eleanor said, leading Rose to the kitchen. "Chicken and dumplings, and peach cobbler for dessert. You didn't have to go to all that trouble." "Nonsense. It's not trouble to cook for someone you love." Eleanor gestured to a cutting board. "Make yourself useful and chop those carrots." They worked side by side in comfortable silence for a while, falling into the rhythm of shared tasks. This was what family should be. Rose thought supportive, collaborative, accepting. "I heard about Dwayne's visit to your office," Eleanor said finally, adding herbs to the simmering pot. Rose's hand stilled on the knife. "News travels fast." "He called me after," Eleanor admitted. "Wanted me to talk some sense into you." And Eleanor snorted. "I told him he was reaping what he sowed." Rose's eyebrows shot up. "You did. Don't look so surprised." The older woman stirred the pot with deliberate movements. "I love my son, but I'm not blind to his faults. What he and Veronica did to you all these years, it wasn't right." "Then why didn't you ever say anything before?" Rose couldn't keep the hurt from her voice. Eleanor sighed, her weathered face softening. "I did many times, but Dwayne was always stubborn. And I thought eventually he'd see what was right in front of him. How special you are. How much he was missing by not appreciating you." She reached for Rose's hand, her skin papery against Rose's smooth palm. "I should have done more. Been louder. I'm sorry for that." Rose swallowed against the unexpected lump in her throat. "It's not your fault." "Maybe not. But I want you to know you were always the strongest of them all." Eleanor squeezed her hand. "And you don't owe them a damn thing." They ate dinner at the small kitchen table, sharing stories and memories that had nothing to do with Dwayne, Veronica, or Tiffany. For the first time in years, Rose felt like she belonged somewhere, with someone who saw her clearly and loved her anyway. After dinner, over slices of cobbler and cups of coffee, Eleanor brought out a small wooden box. "I want you to have this," she said, sliding it across the table. Rose opened it carefully. Inside sat a delicate gold locket on a thin chain. "It was my mother's," Eleanor explained. "I always planned to give it to you someday. Seems like now is the right time." Rose lifted the necklace, the gold warm against her fingers. "It's beautiful." "Open it." Inside was a tiny black and white photograph of Eleanor as a young woman holding a baby. On the opposite side, a more recent photo showed Eleanor with Rose at her college graduation. "The only two women in this family with any sense," Eleanor said with a wink. Rose fastened the chain around her neck, the locket resting just below her collarbone. It felt right there, a connection to the only family member who had ever truly seen her worth. "Thank you," she said simply.